Dude, really? How? And what? How can you get this tested? I'm also pretty sure this is not exactly realistic. And do you know what also is not realistic? WRC, the video games. The underdog of rally games. The child with questionable parents. First in the hands of these British blokes. And then 5 years later in the hands of Italians. 4 games later, and it is the Simpleton games developing WRC until this very point. They are French. So we have 3 countries trying their hand at developing games based on actual WRC, like this. The British, under PlayStation's funding, developed a pretty decent rally game for the time, the WRC, and the game received praising reviews. Their games would also be competing with Colin McRae Rally, now called Dirt Rally. And they were not the underdog, developing WRC 2 from 2002, which certainly is not hanging back behind Colin McRae Rally games. But then it went a little downhill, with WRC 3 from 2003. While not getting superb reviews, it would still provide a decent experience. And WRC 4 from 2004 would renew the position of the series and was considered one of the best rally games you could get at the time. Then came WRC Rally Evolved, a decent game followed by a radio silence. It is important to know that these games, when compared to at the time, and sadly even nowadays, the best sim, the one and only Richard Burns Rally, they will be much more on the arcadey side, obviously. Which is not a bad thing if done right, and this studio somewhat delivered. And then they tried developing a drive club and gone bust. Well, they were later on picked up by EA, so basically gone bust with extra steps. And just so we're complete, in 2005 there was a WRC game made for PSP by different British blokes, but no one cares, so let's move on. But after 5 years this series would get revived by a bunch of Italians.
Pizza time.
And if your publisher name is Black Bean Games, you know it's either a real disaster or so bad that it's actually good. And with Milestone Games, also Italian, developing the next installment, one would have to wonder what could go wrong. Well, plenty. Starting with WRC FIA World Rally Championship from 2010. While it brings a decent career mode, it's the handling that for 2010 era is not very satisfying, and visuals also not make the best impression. WRC 2 FIA World Rally Championship from 2011. It's similar to the first installment, perhaps too similar. More like exactly the same. Basically, this is just the 2010 game with a few additions not worth mentioning. They also recycled a lot of stages from the 2010 game. Pretty bad. WRC 3 FIA World Rally Championship from 2012. This is surprisingly not a complete disaster. The physics are terrible, but if you close both of your eyes, it would be a decent rally game. Simply no match for a Dirt series. WRC 4 FIA World Rally Championship from 2003. The main thing about this game is that finally the Pizza Boys delivered a decent physics model that could provide some satisfaction. Couple it with finally decent graphics and you get a decent rally game. I actually remember playing this one, and I can tell you, while the physics might be decent, it is still not as good as for example Dirt 3, but that might be just my opinion. Surprisingly, the Pizza Boys did not stop having pizza time and are still developing games. Not good games, but games. Well, they wouldn't touch WRC series anymore. Now it's time for the Baguette Boys to try their hand at it. Kiloton Games released their first game in 2015, and instead of starting the numbering all over again from WRC 1, they lined the game up with the Italian WRC. They also sadly carried over the Italian quality of the WRC games. Actually, WRC 5 is arguably worse than WRC 4. Handling is so imprecise and it feels cheap. Not a good start for Baguette Boys. And coming up against the behemoth that is Dirt Rally, it certainly cannot afford to be so bare bones. WRC 6 from 2016 brings only very little to the table, and if we look at its card deck, well, you get things like slightly better camera and somewhat human co-driver and nicer graphics, but the developers certainly have not noticed the physics they made are quite bonkers. 2017 comes around and the boys from France are announcing that they are aiming for the simulation of rallying. It's certainly a claim that stands out, not because there would not be any sims, but because their previous titles were arcades, and they couldn't even make those properly. So yeah, sure, we would not trust the French. And then it arrived. I remember how I couldn't wait to play the game, except that's a lie, I just wanted to act like you should care about the game. Because at the time, I would be glued to RBR, literally. I did not give a French pie filled with mate, but maybe I should have given him French pie filled with mate, because them boys pulled off something almost magical. They tried creating a sim, but they failed, but not miserably enough to create a mess, but just enough to create a decent simcade, similar to how France ended up on the winning side of World War II. The physics are just a perfect balance between a sim and an arcade. For example, you can feel the car's weight shifting around the corners, but the game is forgiving enough to not let you to yeet yourself off the track due to aggressive weight transfer. WRC 8 from 2019 introduces the standard for upcoming WRC games. The shift from WRC 7 to 8 is the moment when the game steps out of the history to the present. You could now look at the physics in a way that either they reach the final stadium or that they are stuck and the Bucket Men are no longer willing to make any significant changes. Nonetheless, they showed off their creativity, introducing career mode, oddly similar to the one from F1 games. WRC 9. They copied the career mode from WRC 8, which they stole from F1, truly the art of rallying. The physics have changed a bit, just so no one could say they copied them. Same goes for everything else, also the stages, but that is just how WRC works in the real world. Except in real life, they don't steal from F1. Oh wait.
I don't know, I just woke up from a little nap. It's a little dark, but you guys silly? I'm still gonna send it.
WRC 10. Apparently something is worth celebrating, so you get random events from history with cars that look like replicas of Chinese-made car toys for kids of the actual rally cars. Arguably looks even worse. The cars are lit up like a Christmas tree and look a bit off, but they introduced private teams to career mode, so that's a welcomed addition. WRC Generations. Apparently it's time to celebrate again for literally no reason whatsoever. Are we supposed to celebrate the great times we had playing WRC 5? Or maybe it's the generation of kids who enjoyed WRC and its wonders. That would be hard to believe, though. But people believe at all kinds of things, right? Well, me personally, I'm just still having PTSD from this and this. Nonetheless, here we are, newest installment. And they really stuffed it like a beaver, simply
16 times the detail, 16 times the
stages,
16 times the
cars,
16 times the
crashes,
16 times the
Damage!
Honestly, so far so, I spent most of the time in settings, not just because one simply doesn't bind the wheel and pedals, but after you get it done, the default settings are straight up not safe for work stuff. And then, when you dare to turn the game off, after you return to it, it's all gone, and you have to bind it again. I know that some people do not suffer from these issues, because they can't even launch the game to experience them. This modern standard of gaming is truly an escape from our world to a world where nothing works. But before the game decided to banish my steering wheel from being a steering wheel, I managed to capture some footage. First, the game shows you 3 tutorials, which tell you as much about rallying as Santa Claus can tell you about communism.
Flat left into right 4,
What do you
right
mean
into 15.
usually? And then I slide off the track, and surprisingly, as it turned out, the developers really took the realism to the next level, and went with less grip on gravel, and the importance of cambers and simply finding the grip wherever you can really steps into foreground. Gravel is a lot closer to RBR than Dirt Rally 2.0, also the brakes are a lot weaker than in previous installments and I find it much more realistic. It is difficult to adapt though, because when I see the graphic style of WRC, I think arcadey car go speedy broom. But the weight of the car can really be felt. Mind you, this is not even the hybrid, it's just some boys R5 car. Sadly the cars are mixed bag. Some cars, the hybrids for example, sound good, but the Lancias, for example, sound like a mixer with a gearbox, especially the Stratos, or the Stradale.
2 opens, into left 3 opens. Three, 2, 1, let's go. Right 2, keep into left 2, tightens. 50. Left 6, short 100.
Go. 56 left of a crest, 80, 5 right of a crest into descent.
But I have to say that while the models look still a bit Chinese from the outside, from the inside, the interiors have improved quite a bit, and now I would dare to say that it can compete with the J 2.0. Not win, but compete. The first feedback has received mixed reviews, but in my opinion it's because the default settings are communicating the road surface to you as well as South African president is communicating the membership figures.
We announced that our membership figures stood at 700. Listen properly.
But if you tune the feedback, you can get quite a good result. The Baguette Man also gave us an advanced explanation on tuning settings, with external paper elaborating on this matter. I don't know, but this puts a smile on my face. You could ask why is this not included in a game? Because it looks like some child's science fair. No, the real reason is, and I quote, documentation was completed after the development. But at least they might implement it in the future. If I back up to driving, as I already explained how the gravel feels realistic, tarmac, as known from previous installments, is really good. Let's now look how does it feel playing the game. Whoa, I'm gonna give it the benefit of the doubt and call it a message that you cannot go straight for your whole life.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, let's go. Flat left short, widen 150. Caution, left 5 narrows 100. Right 6 brake over crest and left 4 narrows at junction 100. Brake hairpin left, don't cut. Into flat right and flat left 50. Right 4 short and left 6 for right 5, 30. Right 3 and right 4 into left 4, cut 30. Hairpin right, don't cut 40. Flat left short into right 5, into left 5, keep in. And right 5 tightens for left 5 medium.
Yeah, so that's tarmac, gravel, snow, oh yeah. So I tried Sweden for the test. And I tried it with gamepad, because this way I would kill 4 flies with 1 slap. My wheel no longer being friends with WRC. Gamepad impressions, and Sweden, new location, and obviously snow. Let's start with gamepad. It's decent. I personally recommend the shifting with the buttons set up so that you can shift and use handbrake at the same time, but after tweaking you can get a playable experience. I cannot judge because once you're used to the steering wheel, it's difficult complementing a gamepad, but this is my first time ever on a snow and with a gamepad, and I think that finishing in one piece is a testimony that with some practice, this is totally valid way to play WRC. Next is Sweden itself, and it looks really nice, feels a lot more lively compared to the Ray 2.0, and coupled with a good slidey physics of snow, and it's fairly immersing, although I have to say that when you pick it with snowing conditions, they can break the immersion. In general, the weather effects are not a big deal here. As in Dirt Rally 2.0, they rarely challenge your skills. Nonetheless, let's take a look, and let's try rear-wheel drive. Lancia Stratos.
50, left 4, fast.
Two things come to my mind. The rear-wheel drive Stratos drives fairly authentically, with throttle generating oversteer and short wheelbase making the car twitchy.
Medium 30.
But the sound, this game could use a sound mode. Cockpit also now looks decent, certainly doesn't have the charm of Dirt Rally 2.0, but not bad, at least in peripheral vision. Obviously then there is the career mode. It's the same as in previous installments. It's miles better than Dirt Rally 2.0. You start out with picking one of the 3 options based on your skill level, and then you enter the loop of going up a category, racing, going up a category, and it just goes on. The team management here has a really great implementation, and before you start a rally, you have to pick what tires you will want to use for the whole event, and it's much more elaborate than in Dirt Rally 2.0, where it's basically soft or wet. Anything else is just useless. Overall, in my opinion, Kiloton Games, the French baguette men, after 7 years managed to finally, at least in my eyes, beat the Dirt Rally 2.0. Not in all aspects, but when I sum it up, WRC has more stages, better looking stages, better tarmac physics, arguably better gravel physics. Snow is somewhat same. The force feedback after you tune it can deliver. Personally, I think it's either on the same level as Dirt or maybe a bit worse. The cars, although much better in Dirt Rally 2.0, I think that the WRC managed to catch up with a few of its cars, but other cars are left with a mixer sound. Career mode is better in WRC, obviously. The multiplayer, I think it's too early to make a judgment, because feature-wise, WRC in theory should have the edge, but practice might be different. Dirt Rally 2.0 does many things better than WRC. Inside of the car you can feel every bump and a stone going up.
Because it came some stone or something through Timo's seat, up in the ass of Timo.
The physics of the rear wheel drives are a bit more fleshed out, but no longer by a huge gap like in previous installments, where the rear wheel drives in WRC could understeer under throttle. But let's not forget that the WRC license is now on its way to Codemasters, so maybe they will retake the position, or maybe the new publisher EA will drag them into the mess that most EA games become. What is for sure, that if this format of videos is any good, by subscribing and perhaps commenting, you ensure more of these Simpleton videos. I'm out of here.